this book actually describes this extraordinary journey, a real life hero's first-hand account of how to disseminate dacoits and terrorists. In this very short duration interview with his wife, Veena Raman, I might only be able to touch the surface of a life story which needs to be celebrated really. But let me begin by asking Veena one of the questions, and then we will move to Mrityunjay for his book. Mrs. Raman, I'm reading an extract from Vijay Raman's book. From the chapter, the most popular one, which is Pan Singh Tomar, a moment in the history of dacoity that has been marked on celluloid as well, as we know. Raman, after recounting that night-long encounter in the village Rathiadipura, where he was surrounded and decimated the famous dacoit, says in the book, and I quote, "For me as a person, the Pan Singh encounter was a turning point in my career that established my credentials as a police officer and brought me the respect and affection of not just my team, but also the local population." My question to you is a rather varied one. Take your time, and you might change it if you wish. Why did Vijay Raman feel that this was a turning point in his career, and how did it establish his credentials as a police officer? He says it was a great risk to his own life. Maybe you dealt with many such situations. I'd like to hear from you, and so would the audience.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. Yeah. I thank the Pune Literature Festival for having. I thank the Pune Literature Festival for having given my husband's book a chance on this platform. To answer your question, Vijay started his career in the Chambal region, which was one of the most difficult regions in those times, because dacoits, of course, today are not heard of, but those days, what terrorists are today, dacoits were in those days the terror in that region. And for him, it was the first posting in Bhind, and when he went there, he was about 27 years old and without a mustache. So when people saw a superintendent of police without a mustache, they felt ki, hello, this guy is not the one who can have any kind of this thing. So he had to actually face a lot of problems, in the sense people would not give him information. He didn't know how to go about it, how to get these dacoits. And like day in and out, he used to be out trying to get some information from the people and trying to get informers and things like that. So it was a very tough period for him. I'd seen him, like my child would never see him. Like when he got up, father was away. When he came back, my son was sleeping. And then even his staff or the people who were working with him were not that cooperative, because they were not sure what kind of an officer he was and which caste he was and things like that, because that played a lot of role in that area in those times. Now things have changed. But gradually, when this Pan Singh encounter took place, so he felt, yes, that is something which, the people recognized him as a police officer. And for him, it was something which he had not ever thought. And the people, the force, everything, they were with him. And then they started looking up to him. So that is when he felt, yes, I have actually made it into the eyes of the people.
Yeah, thank you. So since you mentioned caste, and you said that, it also mattered at that time in the Madhya Pradesh cadre, and not that it has gone away, the caste distinctions everywhere, but it did matter about what caste was Vijay, because Vijay, as we know, he hailed from Kerala, all right, and he was in the Madhya Pradesh cadre, and so she mentioned that, and this is a nice time to switch over to Mrityunjay, because his book actually speaks about the caste politics, and the rise of Lalu Prasad Yadav was because of the toppling of the so-called upper caste, which was ruling Bihar for so long and had made such a mess of Bihar. Just a little bit of Mrityunjay, and then we will ask you a question. Okay, born and raised in undivided Bihar. Okay, so today we have Jharkhand and Bihar. So he was undivided Bihar. Jharkhand happened in 2000. Yeah. He is a first generation entrepreneur, a social activist. He is an engineering graduate from BIT Mesra, Ranchi, and an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. Apart from various senior roles in companies, Asian Paints to name one, he has also had the privilege to work with the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, Dr. Raman Singh. So he's also got a lot of political experience there. He now lives in Ranchi, Jharkhand, deserted Bihar. Okay, and now that Bihar is divided, and he has his own startup which assists young people for placements. It was very interesting when I was reading about you. Interestingly, he also has a passion for working in underserved communities, and therefore he has a social initiative called Kartavya Path, where they are teaching mathematics to the underserved children. That's of my special interest since I'm an educationist. Okay? His teaching extends to higher education as well, and he's taking a lot of guest lectures in the IIMs. Now, this book of his, fascinating, Broken Promises, is a story of Bihar's plunge into an abyss of crime, corruption, and economic ruin. But just quickly moving on to what we can ask him as a question, Lalu Prasad taking the oath in the historic Gandhi Maidan, उन्होंने वो चुना, and declaring, उन्होंने बोला, अब कोई अत्याचार नहीं होगा, अब कोई जुल्म नहीं होगा, अब कोई भ्रष्टाचार नहीं होगा, अब कोई बेईमानी नहीं होगी, ये कसम हम खाए हैं. अब ऐसी लोकतंत्र बनाना है, लोगों की लोकतंत्र. Okay, that's what he said, and it's in Hindi, but we understand what he meant. Okay, now it's famously said by J.P. Narayan of Lok Satta Party, if UP or Bihar fail, India fails, because they are large states. First question to you, why did you choose the word caste and crime to describe the politics of Bihar?
Yeah, good afternoon everybody, and thank you to PILF for organizing such a amazing lit fest, and thank you to my fellow panelists for being there and having this discussion. So the question here is, why did I choose crime and caste to describe the politics of the 1990s in Bihar? For any era, and it was a tough choice. It isn't like these were the obvious choices that I had, but to crystallize anything, you would have to pick up words which would be the most prominent or most influencing in a certain era. And if I look at the 1990s Bihar, two things which I think dominate the entire narrative and the governance and the politics of that era is, so in 1990, and as I write in the book, it wasn't something like that crime was not existing earlier to 1990s, or in fact there was not a connection between criminals and politicians. The criminalization of politics had started ever since independence itself. But in 1919, Bihar, it in one way got institutionalized. If you look at the elections in 1990 in Bihar, 30 independent candidates won their elections in the Legislative Assembly in that year. And all these 30 candidates were some Bahubali from some place or the other in Bihar. And not just these 30 independents. In fact, most of the MLAs who got elected from either side of the parties were in some way had some muscle power in some area of Bihar. In fact, in those times, you could not even have filed your nomination for an election if you were not strong enough. And you understand what I mean by strong enough. So in turn, crime is something which is a very underlying theme of, the politics of that era. And second, a lot of these crimes, while of course these crimes would not have any religion or caste or so as to say, but a lot of these were influenced by caste. So even within crimes, people would have sympathy for criminals of their own caste. So for criminals of their own caste, they would say Bahubali. But for criminals of other caste, they would say Chor, criminal, Uchakka, whatever. Same would happen in collaborations. So criminals of same caste would collaborate with each other. Same would happen with their views on social issues. So in fact, when the Mandal Commission got implemented in the 1990, a lot of these so-called criminal politicians or Bahubalis, they took sides, right? Depending on which side of the caste spectrum do they come from. So a lot of upper caste resisted it. A lot of OBC leaders, stood for it. And there also caste played a very, very important role. And you see this throughout the 1990s, which is a very concoction of caste and crime, and hence I've kept it as an underlying theme of the politics of the 90s of Bihar.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. So that's the period when you're talking about 1990s, unknown to probably Lalu Prasad Yadav, Vijay Raman was killing terrorists and decimating dacoits. Okay, because 1982, Pan Singh Tomar. All right, from Chambal Ghati, and then he moves on to various, and the book is very interesting, and I will not do justice neither to yours to cover every aspect of it, but it is a must read, both the books. You cannot put them down. And he's also talking so much about the Bhopal gas tragedy and so much else that we probably know about. But what I want to come back to, Veena, is that Pan Singh encounter took place in 1982, and 20 years later, in 2002, there was an encounter to bring down a dreaded terrorist. By that time, not a dacoit, but a terrorist, okay, who was called Ghazi Baba, but naam unka kuch aur tha. And he was a Pakistani national, as we found out later. And he was the mastermind behind the parliament attack, which had happened, which all of us will remember. And then he was constantly escaping and largely hiding out in Jammu and Kashmir. And I know that this was the third posting that Vijay Raman had in Jammu and Kashmir, and he was specially summoned to take down Ghazi Baba. And that's why he had gone there. So my question is, that chapter ends with a very, very poignant line. I don't know who wrote that. I'm guessing Vijay wrote that, okay? And it is the policeman who must create terror in the heart of the terrorist. It is so well said, so well said. And just the name of Vijay Raman must have created that terror in many, many villainous hearts. I'm sure of it. That's the man he was. I want to read a little bit from the chapter to move to what is courage in the face of crime. Okay. He says, Dubey, okay, when an officer who was with Raman in that encounter on the terrace where this Ghazi Baba, imagine, you don't know where he is. They suddenly spot a mirror. He's hiding behind that mirror. And they come to know from the carpenter that behind the mirror, a gufa hai. And when they start knocking on that, firing starts from behind the mirror. Okay? And Vijay Raman is doing various other things, and he puts Dubey in charge. And Vijay writes, Dubey moved to fire 15 rounds from his AK-47. When he realized he could not move his right hand because it had already been hit by a burst of bullets. Just then, a bullet was shot into his stomach. He received another in his right leg, another in his left shoulder, a pellet on his finger. He was put into a gypsy and driven straight away to the hospital, where they tried to take out 7 bullets from this injured man who continued to fight for Vijay Raman. At Ghazi Baba, he also writes, he was badly injured. After several surgeries also, he could not do well and he retired prematurely from there. I think this is the cost of courage, that you show on duty. So my question to you is, did he discuss this situation with you? I'm sure he must have. Every time that he came home, so many stories. I'm taking the liberty of pointing to you that Vikram, their son, is right here in the audience, in the first row, Vijay and Veena's son. Did he discuss with you? I also know, I read in the book, that in spite of Vijay's best efforts, Dubey was not given the Ashok Chakra. He was given the Kirti Chakra. So what do you have to say about that? And then they move back to him.
Well, Vijay was in Kashmir when he was first posted, and that's when he actually got a lot of sort of, you can say, informers who were informing him of the various things. And then gradually he got the confidence of the people, and after that he went back to Delhi. After that, he again came for the fencing of the borders of Kashmir. So in a way, it was a deterrent for all these terrorists. But when he came there, and this mission to get Ghazi Baba was his main thing, of course, he discussed very, very rarely, to be honest, about his official work with me. But yes, he used to be very concerned and very, you can say, worried about things. So after this whole event, he did discuss a bit with me, saying, what a difficult task it was, because the people were also there. There were civilians in the house when they had this encounter, and he always believed that, you know, the terrorists were there, but why should the civilians suffer? So he ensured that the encounter was managed in such a manner where the civilians were safe, and Ghazi Baba's family, children who were living in that house had to be moved out after announcing that please come out, and then otherwise, you know, we're going to have some consequences. So he had that human nature of his, which he actually showed in that encounter. And that's when, you know, he saw the wife coming out from the house, which earlier during his tenure when he had been there, one of the officers has pointed out when he was doing on his, you know, like going on a tour, that this is the lady whom you see on this cover. They had shown Ghazi Baba, that is his wife, and so he had a very good recollection of the wife. So that's how he knew Ghazi Baba was sure there in that house. So it was a very tough kind of a thing. They had to take decisions. So he was talking about one of his juniors who gave him an idea as to how to get these people who were stuck, his own people were stuck upstairs. So they actually piled up a few mattresses they got from somewhere so that those people could land there. And fortunately one of them was a Malayali, so he could speak to him in Malayalam, so that the terrorists who are always, I mean, they were all in the same band sometimes, that they knew what you are actually, you know, actually conversing. So just to, so that they don't understand what they're saying, so he actually spoke to him in Malayalam, and this gentleman understood. Okay, he said you have to jump down, we have kept mattresses, and that's how some of the other officers were saved, because they jumped down, and after that they actually blew up this thing. So it was, these are a few snippets he used to share with me.
I know. And I know, that's marvelous how they lined up the mattresses. And in Malayalam, he said, just slide down. Even if you can't jump, if you're injured, come to the cover edge of the terrace and slide down, and we will hold you. And that's how he was getting his men out. Yeah, thank you. You know, since we started with Lalu's fiery speech and lots of promises, none of which he kept, of course. Actually, initially he did. I mean, Lalu Prasad Yadav used to make surprise visits to schools and hospitals, and he would go to the panchayat and he would take these sessions there. In the beginning, actually, he was a dreamer, and he did a lot of things, and he sort of won the hearts of the people by doing all that. And he went to his mother and touched his feet and said, "Mai, main to Mukhyamantri ban gaya," in Bihari, which I can't repeat. And you know what his mother said? That, "Wo kya hota hai?" And so he said, he gave the name of somebody ke unse bhi main bada ban gaya, not a chief minister. So she said, "Acha theek hai, magar tere ko sarkari naukri nahi mili na." And that became a joke for full life. He would keep narrating that my mother says that I didn't get a government job, I just became a chief minister. So there are many humorous and lovely things about, but I think Mrityunjay, you know, your book never ever makes a caricature of Lalu Yadav. You keep him much above that, because everybody else has a joke about him, but you keep him above that and talk about his politics. I quote from your preface: "While this might have been bringing hope to millions of marginalized Biharis by poverty, caste atrocities and inequalities, ironically, for the next 15 years of Lalu Prasad Yadav's historic oath-taking reign, Bihar plunged into a failed state. With floundering economy, widespread corruption, lawlessness, bloody wars between private castes, armies, indigenous crimes across every corner of that vast state, businessmen and students had an exodus from Bihar. Everybody left Bihar. And there was an apathetic political leadership. Bihar, by the way, was the cradle of our civilization. We have Pataliputra, which is Patna. We have Ashoka. And that is where we got our universities from. We got Nalanda. We got Vikramshila from there. And this is what happened to that state. What do you think, Mrityunjay, is the relationship between crime and politics? And why do you think these two are so intertwined? One doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah, so in fact, before coming to very sharply answer that question. Uh, One thing that you mentioned is when Lalu first came to power, and his first few weeks, months, or years, maybe I would say, seemed like kind of a revolution, kind of a leader who had just arrived, the right kind of leader who had just arrived, the kind of leader who everybody would look up to, who people had been waiting for years. It's something like in movies, if you have seen the movie Nayak, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Nayak, Anil Kapoor's movie. And when Anil Kapoor takes over the chief ministerial position for a day, and how it pans out. So, Lalu was something like that, right? But in politics, and then you talk about, I've just talked about his politics, because on a very serious note, anybody who is in opposition or who has just come in power, you'll not be able to evaluate them. It's very, very easy to be in opposition and just keep criticizing the other side, which is the government. And everybody looks like a hero in opposition. You just look at all the people in our country and the world. I'll not take names. Everybody you used to idolize while they were in opposition, when they came in power, that is when you start to truly get a sense of who they are, right? And just a few months would not be, good enough. Just let them be in power for a couple of years, and that will reveal their true identities, right? That happens with most of the politicians in India, and that is what happened with Lalu as well, right? Power is not something which is very easily digestible by a lot of people, right? It gets into the head of most of the people, right? And it did get into the head of Lalu. Also, what Lalu realized is, to hold on to power, like as common citizens, we often speak of development and growth and economy and policies and so on. Lalu realized in 1990 that development politics is a very tough politics. In fact, to do any growth or development, it takes years. Even to build a road, nowadays it's been much easier. But in the 1990s, to get a road built would take, let's say, 5-10 years. To get electricity to a place would take 5 years. To build a school or a hospital would take 5 years, 10 years. By the time elections would have come and, you would not have anything to show. So Lalu said, this is not the way I would be able to keep on power. He said, and he saw that in his daily lives, what was attracting more people. He would see when he was trying to strike a chord with emotive issues, identity issues, caste issues, that you have been oppressed, there have been atrocities, now it is the time for you to rise. He was saying that it was striking a chord with people. And people were coming to his side and cheering his name, and Lalu Yadav Zindabad uske baad ho raha tha. So he said, this is the way I'll be able to hold on to power. So let's not get distracted by development and growth and all those things, right? This is the shortest and the easiest path.
That's why he said, I think there's that famous line, Vikas nahi, samman chahiye, is what he said.
So it's a very famous line of Lalu wherein he says, Vikas nahi, samman chahiye. And to anybody, wherein he would go to villages and people, if they would ask for roads, कि सम्मान तो मिल गया, अब सड़क भी बनवा दीजिए. And he would say कि सड़क का क्या करोगे? तुम लोगों के पास गाड़ियां है क्या? गाड़ियां तो सारी ऊंची जातियों वाले के पास है. तुम्हारे बच्चे रोड पे खेलते रहेंगे, वो गाड़ी चढ़ा के चल देंगे. तो सड़क चाहिए क्या तुम्हें? तो बोला नहीं तब रहने दीजिए. So this was Lalu. And hence, as a very fallout of this kind of a narrative, he also needed such kind of people to hold on to power. Because in a democracy, Indian democracy, you need the MLAs. And he did not have any ideology, so as to say. So what he needed was very strong, Bahubalis in every corner of the state who would keep on to that power or hold on to their power, right? Be their right-hand man, so as to say. And hence, what happens, and specifically in the 1990s, in fact, even now in some bits, to be able to fight and win elections is a very tough game. It is not about talent, it is not about, eligibility and your qualifications and so on. In fact, those are deterrents. If you are highly educated, that's a deterrent to you being a politician. So it's better you are not educated. And what is more better is, that you have a certain clout, that you come from a caste and you are the leader of that caste, or you have resources. And hence Lalu by design, right? And in fact, the entire Bihar politics by design went into a path wherein the criminals also wanted a legitimacy, and they thought politics is the best legitimate way to, and the parties wanted certain candidates which were more winnable than others, and the criminals were more winnable than others. So both needed each other, right? And hence the criminals became the best politicians, and all politicians, yeah.
And probably continues. Probably continues. So that is about very, very riveting and compelling books, both of them. I have been very fortunate because I was moderating the session, so I've got complimentary copies of both. Okay. But for you, they're available outside, and never miss it, both the books. I mean, they'll keep you hooked to what they're saying. Okay, I'm also watching time. We have very little time left, actually. And we also will need to take questions from the audience. What I would like to do is first throw it to the audience, see if there are some questions which come, and if they're not, if they don't, we'll again come back to the two of you, okay? So we're talking about two books here. One is, Did I Really Do This? Did I Really Do All This? By IPS Officer Vijay Raman. And the other one is Broken Promises by Mrityunjay Sharma. This talks about Bihar and Lalu Yadav. And this talks about the Indian police systems and the dacoity and various things that Vijay Raman did. So, questions from you now. कोई माइक वहाँ पे देगा? ज़रूरत नहीं है. अच्छा.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the wonderful session. It was really nice.
This is why I was saying mic कोई देगा क्या? Because somebody is speaking without the mic and we can't hear. So if you can pass the mic. Yes, ma'am.
Me? Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful session. It was really nice. I'm Indu and I'm from Jamshedpur. So I'd like to ask you a question. I was so relating with everything Mrityunjay was saying at that point of time. And I just wanted to ask, see, we are in a generation that we felt frustrated with the kind of education system after 12th. No opportunities. That was way back. Maybe we were growing up in the 90s in schools, basically. And then 2000s come, and then late 2000s come. Even now, the situation is same, okay? The government's changed, everything's changed, the situation is same. What is the hope ahead for the next generations or the coming generation? Or is there any hope? People say, it's the exodus from India. We'll say that actually is the exodus from the state of Bihar, and feels bad because even if now you say the educated people in very important positions in the government offices are there, they want to do something.
May I request you to keep the question short?
Yeah.
That's a request for everyone. We are really running
so
against time.
Hope ahead for the future generations.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrityunjay.
There's no straight answer to that question, to be honest. I would have both sides of the views. In fact, if you ask me, has something changed since 1990s? I would say a lot of things have changed. You may disagree with me. But in a simple way, if I consider law and order, right? In the 1990s, I would say the crimes, the police and politicians were on the same side. So in 1990s, you could not file a FIR for a crime that had happened to you. It was as simple as that. But today, at least you could resort to filing an FIR and some action would be taken. So I would say there's some change. Some 1990s, I don't remember. So in fact, when I had to go to my village, we had to walk almost 6 or 7 kilometers on the final stretch. And in the rainy season, it will be all muddy. So we had to, pull up our pants and walk for those 6-7 kilometers. Nobody knew what a bulb would feel like or look like. Nowadays, most of the villages have roads, electricity and so on. But still, I am not very happy with this condition, to be honest. What has happened is, well, some of the things have changed, and you say, a lot of politics is very, very similar. If you see in Bihar, from 1990s, 15 years was ruled by Laluji and then his wife. And last 20 years has largely been Nitish Kumar. They've all been the origins of the JP era, right? We need certain fresh thoughts, people, mindset to be coming into the politics. The other flip side of this is, which is, there are not a lot of good people coming to politics. And it is not the fault of these people, but in fact, both sides. The politics of India is not encouraging enough for good people to come in. And people are not making the hard efforts to get inside politics and break it for good people to come in. So I think the efforts would have to be from both sides.
Thank you so much. There's a mic which can come in the front. So I'd like, there are two. No, there's a lady at the back. Pehle unko dijiye. And also, if there are questions for whoever, then maybe just you can direct it that way. We'll take
sir,
two more.
Yeah. One question for sir about Laluji.
Mrityunjay.
Mrityunjay sir. About his, actually he developed our railway in a different way. So did you mention in your book what he has done?
Brief questions, thank you.
That's a very good question. In fact, I'd mentioned it in my book also. But if you see, again, very, very factually, there were reports of how he had developed the railways and the revenues and all increased. But then there was a report by the CAG which came out, which essentially said that it was a financial chicanery rather than real improvements in the railways. Right? So yeah, I have mentioned that.
One more question to
No,
Veena ji.
1 minute please. We are taking very few questions. We're short of time. I'm so sorry. There are two hands here. Yes. Here and then here too. यहाँ पे और फिर वहाँ पे. Yeah.
You just spoke about how politicians for the last 3 decades are from JPR and not the new people coming in. What do you think about Prashant Kishore? He's experimenting something.
We were expecting that question today.
So it's never about, see, a real democracy, a powerful democracy is never about one person, right? It can never be one Prashant Kishore changing the entire face of Bihar. It will never happen. It will be in the same way, and you may have different views. So अगर हम 2012 की बात करते हैं तो everybody looked at Arvind Kejriwal in the same way, or you looked at Lalu Prasad Yadav in the same way in the
That's
1980s. So it will never happen with one person. It will need 1,000 Prashant Kishores with different ideologies, different backgrounds, different ways to come in and work their way in and then try to change the Bihar.
Thank
right?
you. I'm going to take two questions actually. I think somebody is also directing a question from the gentleman with the cap. And this one. Yeah, please sir. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for a lovely session. My question is to Veena ji. My name is Ajit Madholka. I heard during your podcast that there were a lot of temples which were lying in ruins in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, long that point in time when even Vijay was there. So, is there any mention of revival of those temples or some ASI activities at that time? Thank you.
Actually, there's Padma Shri K.K. Mohammed who actually took help from Vijay because it was all dacoit infested and the temples were all in ruins. So with Vijay's help and Vijay putting in word to these dacoits to ensure that he was not disturbed while he was restructuring the entire temples, which helped Mr. K.K. Mohammed, and he was able to make the entire complex of about 50 temples, restructure them. So, which of course Vijay has not mentioned in the book because it was not what he has done. He only helped out Mr. K.K. Mohammed to ensure that the temples were, reassembled there.
But Mr. K.K. Mohammed was there for the Delhi book launch, which I happened to attend, and he spoke about that. He was there himself. So was Lieutenant General Nazeeb Jung, and they were talking about their experiences with Vijay in these other thing that has happened. So thank you for that. One question here, yes, please. Yeah, probably the last one.
Yeah, this is directed to Mrs. Raman. In the book, there are many anecdotes of criminals and dacoits surrendering to the police, only to be pardoned and they becoming politicians again. So, did Mr. Vijay Raman ever feel that the actual surrender was not by the dacoits to them, but by the police to the dacoits?
Yes. In fact, in his book, you will find that Malkhan Singh was another dacoit after Phulan Devi, who was a very big dacoit, and he had, as per the the paper reportings, because Vijay was transferred out within 24 hours because he was not listening to what they wanted. So basically they were having a lot of things like, we want these things to be done, only then we would surrender. So they had certain promises to be made, which Vijay was not agreeing to. So he was like transferred out and given a very good posting in Raipur, where people couldn't complain as to that he was shunted out. So they could, we've given him a better posting. So that is when you find that a lot of people sometimes have to give in, so that in the longer run they had to. So they shunted Vijay out, and then they got the other people to surrender. So in a way, the government surrendered to their demands, where Vijay didn't surrender to their demands. That's the only thing I can say.
I'm going back to the authors. Yes, Haz? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so after Malkhan Singh surrendered, after Vijay was transferred, he sort of was in jail for a long time, and by the time we had left Madhya Pradesh and we were in Delhi, where Vijay was posted with Rajiv Gandhi ji, and on one Sunday when we heard the bell ring, which was those days when we had these Sunday movies, and we were all watching. My son was there, my husband, me, and when the bell rang, and of course son, the youngest, he had to go and open the door, and this was a flat in Delhi. So when Vikram went and opened the door, so he found some men with guns and with big mustaches and all that, and he said, yes. He says, is Raman Saab yahan pe hai? So he says, haan. Then he says, Bulna Malkhan Dadda aaya hai. So my son by the time had outgrown the dacoit era, and we were living in Delhi. So he closed the door quickly, came back and said, Papa, there's some Malkhan Singh come to meet you. So Vijay said, who is Malkhan Singh? Can't be here. I only know one dacoit. So anyway, Vijay went and opened the door, and lo and behold, there was Malkhan Singh with his 4 or 5 people with his gun. And then and when we were in the districts, we always used to have a small office for the superintendent of police or the officer. Here we didn't have, we just had a drawing room. So we had no other option, but he had said, okay, please come in. So he came in, and then he sat in the drawing room, and he actually told Vijay, I've come to meet you, not for meeting you, but to tell you that I wanted to surrender to you, but because of other things, people got you transferred, but I respected you and I wanted to surrender to you. So that is when first time I realized that how even criminals respect integrity and people with dedication. So that was one thing.
Marvelous. So I think that these episodes are worth reading about, and the book is full of photographs, by the way. The book is full of photographs of various things that were done through all these years, including photographs of the dacoits, the killings, the capture of the ammunition. Last question, if I may, if it's not coming from the audience, but I do have that question, because there were many students here. I think they're still there. Oh, you do? Okay, just after this one. It might answer your question, who knows? What would be your advice for people who want to join politics? You never know, And if you can, what would be your advice? We're just continuously saying this is not right, that's not right.
So, I am one of them, and life took a very unexpected turn, and never in my life had I thought that I would be a politician. So I'm a very typical middle class kid. You can just guess my entire trajectory, the most common one, which is engineering, MBA, corporate, right? Could not be more obvious, right? And then, it took a very unexpected turn, and, I went to work for the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, and then, I met with politics there, which is, in 2018, if you follow politics, Dr. Raman Singh and BJP lost power in Chhattisgarh, and Congress came in power. And the moment they came to power, while we were official appointees, so as to say, for the state, they said, we don't need you now, you are the appointee of the previous government, so just leave, right? And that was my first, meeting with politics, and over the next 2-3 years, I decided that this is not something that I'll, let this kind of thing be happening to me. So this needs to change. And then I thought that nobody else is going to change it. So I thought, let's get into this and try and change it whenever possible in my life. And so I got into politics. My advice, see, the problem with Indian politics is it does not have a structured mechanism for new people to enter into it, unless you have a background, somebody, you know, helping you or so on. But these days there are, you know, again, you'll have to find your ways in. In fact, I was just speaking to somebody. In the next 2 months, we are going to launch a nationwide initiative called 1 lakh politicians, which is essentially to bring 1 lakh new people into politics, which is the hindrances or the barriers that I or we faced while we were trying to put our step in politics should not be faced by other people who are interested in trying to experience politics. So that's an initiative we are launching. In fact, but I think it's more of destiny also. If you think about, if you aspire to, if you really want something very, very hard enough, right? It will come to you.
That's like Paulo Coelho. Want something with all your heart. The universe conspires for you to get it. All right, I think we are running out of time, and she's here. I'm sorry we couldn't take your question, but I'm maybe off the session.